Shalom, everybody. I'm Joel Blackford. This is Blackford Talks Prophecy. And we have special guests tonight. We have Courtenay Turner, and we also have Alex Newman on. Alex is only going to be on for a short period of time. So let's start out with Alex. Alex, please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, Alex Newman here. Great to be with you. I am a Christian, a homeschool father of quite a few children, and a journalist for my day job, if you will. And yeah, my mission in life beyond honoring and glorifying the Lord and raising up my children to do the same is to expose evildoers and their evil plans for all of us.
And you just attended COP30, didn't you?
I did. Yeah. I just got back from Brazil, still a little bit under the weather. Who knows what it was, or, in the Amazon, there's all kinds of crazy bugs and viruses and bacteria. But yeah, I just got back from the COP30 in Belém in Brazil. And boy, was it something.
And how many babies do you have?
So far, 6.
Okay, but good for you. Wow. I have 2 friends with 6. In fact, one of them just had the 6th, and the other is having their 6th shortly here. So amazing. Good for you. God bless you. Yes. Yeah. We need believers with babies. We don't need 1.1 births per family. We need 2.11. So thank you for doing your job.
Bare minimum, right? Yeah, to sustain society. So.
Okay. And so Courtney's going to jump in a little bit. I'll be kind of quiet because, Alex, you kind of know what's going on in the world. Let me take you through what's going on here with COP30. Let me just get this going here. Boom. So you are with Liberty Sentinel. You've made some comments. You talked about a treaty. Globalists are advancing radical climate regime to be imposed on U.S. under next president. Any thoughts on that?
Well, this was the first of the 30 climate conferences where the U.S. government has had no official representation. The State Department told us that they did not want to send anybody because the goal of this conference was to bankrupt the United States, and so therefore they weren't participating, which is all fine and well. I don't think we ought to participate either in my personal capacity. But there's a big problem. Yes, we're out of the Paris Accord and we're out of some of these subsequent agreements that were negotiated at subsequent COPs. But we are not out of the underlying UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the 1992 treaty that all of these subsequent agreements are built upon. And so if we're going to be out, we need to be out. If we're going to be in, well, you ought to go there and make sure that they don't pass some crazy thing. Because everybody was talking about this. It was something of an open secret. And I did send a follow-up to the State Department. They sent me what I would consider to be a very unsatisfactory answer. But everybody was talking about this. Hey, it's great that Trump's not here, because if he was here, he would be a roadblock to our progress, they like to call it. And so their idea was, and by the way, at the highest level, people said this. The former executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Christiana Figueres, said this. Jean Su from the Center for Biological Diversity said this. I got guys on camera that I was interviewing saying, "Oh, we're so glad Trump's not here, because if he was here, he would be a disruptor." And the way these agreements are adopted at the end of the day is by consensus, and by consensus they mean no government files an official objection. So if the Trump administration was there, they could have filed an official objection and they wouldn't have been able to get anything done. That would have been fun and worthwhile. But if we're really going to be out, then I think Trump really needs to get out of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, so that what these people were hoping for, that Trump will be gone in 3 years, as soon as he's gone, we'll just impose all this stuff on them, so that doesn't become reality. So unfortunately, we're in a bad situation right now. No representation there, but still in, and that's not good for anybody.
Okay, so they want carbon tax credits, things like that. Can they impose that without the United States approving it?
Well, that's a good question. They're not going to be able to impose it on us with Donald Trump there, that's for sure. They actually tried earlier this year. They actually approved a global tax earlier this year at a meeting in London. The International Maritime Organization met, and they said, yep, we're going to go full steam ahead with global taxes. Everybody is going to have to pay an emissions tax on shipping, international shipping. And the idea was they were going to charge the people who own and operate these ships global taxes. This would have been the first direct tax on humanity, right? Historically, if the UN wants money, and this has been this way for 80 years, they have to ask their member governments for money. There's only one UN agency that collects its own revenue. It's called the World Intellectual Property Organization, and the amount is negligible. It's just enough to process the patent applications and things. This would have been a true global tax paid directly to a specialized agency of the United Nations. And the Trump administration wisely said, We're not playing. This is ridiculous. They said that this was, and I'm quoting from their letter, wealth redistribution masquerading as environmentalism, which is exactly what it was. But it's worse than that. See, this would have allowed the UN to charge people directly for the first time. And the implications of that are that the UN would have finally broken free from what I would say is probably the biggest check on their power. The biggest check on their power is that they don't have their own money. If they want money, they have to beg governments. And if governments don't hand it over, they can't do anything, right? They're not allowed to just come in and take our money. So this would have opened the floodgates for them to, and to be clear, they say emissions is 3% of global emissions. And emissions are such a crisis that we need this tax on global shipping. Well, if 3% of global emissions is such a terrible crisis, what about 30%, which is what they attribute to agriculture? What about 25, 30%, which they attribute to transportation? What about all the other sources of emissions? So this would have been a blank check for the UN. The Trump administration wisely told them to pound sand. It's not going to happen. And so they are now in a holding pattern, right? They're just a wait and see. We'll wait till Trump's gone. They actually played hardball here. The Trump administration said, look, you do this and there's going to be tariffs. There's going to be sanctions. So don't mess around. We're not paying your taxes, by the way. But best case scenario, we have President Trump in office for another less than 3.5 years now, and they will be right back where they started if these things are not entrenched into federal law, if they're not made permanent. And right now, there's no evidence that these things are being made permanent. They're not being passed into federal law by Congress. It's all just executive action. And so as long as we're in the UNFCCC, as long as we're in the UN, eventually they will get their way. And that's the way they roll, right? Each year they gain as much ground as they think they can. Oh, we got Joe Biden in the White House. Great. Let's take some giant steps forward. Oh, we got Trump. All right, we'll just take little baby steps. Oh, we got Obama in the White House. Great. Let's take some giant steps forward. And that's how this works. Every year they get together. They take as much ground as they think they can. Notice they never give back any ground. They never say, oh, well, Trump's president. Now let's undo all the agreements that we did when Joe Biden was president. That never happens, right? They just keep gaining a little bit of ground until eventually, if they get their way, this climate hoax will be the pretext for global taxes, as we just explained, for global technocratic control, right? They actually enshrined in this year's agreement the notion of a carbon budget. They claimed that humanity has a carbon budget as defined by their pseudoscientists. And their pseudoscientists say that 4/5 of our carbon budget has already been used up. That leaves us 1/5 of our carbon budget left. And they've talked about this for years. How are we going to allocate this? Well, America already emitted a bunch of CO2, so you guys don't get much. India, China, you guys get a little bit more. And so what they expect then, eventually, again, this isn't going to happen over the next 3 years. What they expect is every government will say, all right, our carbon budget is, pick a number, 2,000 gigatons. We have X number of slaves. Each slave will be allowed to emit this much CO2. And if you exceed your budget, you either pay a special tax or you have to buy a carbon credit from Al Gore in exchange for, him uprooting an African village and planting trees or something. So, I mean, that's where this is all going. People need to understand if we're not very, very diligent in stopping it.
And you love Al Gore. I mean, he's your best friend, right?
Obviously, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He and I are just best buds. Yeah, and Bill Gates. And no, I'm not a fan of Al Gore, quite honestly. He comes to these things almost every year and bloviates. Speaking of children, a couple of years ago, he was, I forget which country we were in, but it might have been Poland or something. And he says, we must have ubiquitous population control to solve the climate. Those are his words. I thought, ubiquitous population control. No, thank you, Mr. Gore.
Okay, so I love carbon dioxide. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but when I grow my plants, carbon dioxide feeds my plants. It's kind of like Brondo from Idiocracy. Okay?
Yeah. Except it really does help your plants, unlike Brondo.
Water and carbon dioxide.
It's literally the life molecule. Yeah.
Yep.
And they hate carbon dioxide, right?
Yes.
But they also hate God, so I guess that kind of works.
Yeah. And that really is the simplest way to understand all this. You don't need to go to the cops. You don't need to read all their pseudoscientific papers. You just need to understand whatever God says is good, they say is bad. Whatever God says is bad, they say is good. Carbon dioxide is the gas of life. Therefore, it's bad because life is bad if you're a globalist, Satanist, hate humanity, hate everything that is good. And you're absolutely right. I actually have multiple coffee mugs that I've accumulated over the years that say, I love CO2. I love CO2. The reality is the planet is starving for more CO2. We're at
Right.
historically very, very low levels. CO2 does not control the temperature, by the way, for the people who think it does.
Right. Right.
And I interviewed a lot of scientists on this subject. One of my favorite interviews is Will Happer. I've interviewed him many times. We've shared the stage together, and he's positively brilliant. He's up there in years. He's officially retired, so he doesn't really care who he upsets anymore. But he was a physics professor at Princeton, and he was Donald Trump's climate advisor during his first term. And he just says it bluntly: carbon dioxide is incredibly good for the world. We should encourage people to make more of it. The
Yep.
plants, he told me on camera, were designed to live in an atmosphere with 4 to 5 times as much as we have right now. And so I asked him, so why are they pushing carbon tax? I don't know. It's this evil fanaticism. It reminds me of the Soviet Union. Like, yep,
Yeah.
I think you got it.
Okay, so let's talk about their symbol. And Alex, you were there. You called it a dragon, jaguar, guardian spirit. What's up with that thing on the left-hand side?
Yes, it's a fascinating story. That is the official guardian spirit of the COP30. It was a gift from the Chinese Communist Party, which has murdered more people than any government in the history of humanity. We actually took those pictures, by the way.
I know. Yeah.
And so yeah, this was a gift from China to Brazil, and they said, hey, the spirit of Brazil is the jaguar, the spirit of China is the dragon, and so to symbolize our two countries coming together to save the forest and save the climate and all the rest of it, we have kindly created this nice statue for you. And you know, I've never seen a real life dragon. I have seen some jaguars in my life, but I'm not aware of any dragons having
No.
devil horns. So I'm
No.
not sure where that came from. But you notice it's got human hands and it's holding the whole world in its hands. I couldn't
Oh.
help but think of maybe First John chapter 5. The evil one's got the whole world in his hands. It's in the power of the evil one.
Sure.
And boy, this was a perfect symbol of the spiritual reality of what's going on here. You know, when you understand that it's all based on lies, right? We kind of laugh like, oh, they're such liars. Yeah, it's true. But we need to remember, who is the father of lies? The father of lies is Satan. And so if you have an entire conference based on lies, it's clearly a satanic conference. When the entire conference is dedicated to depopulating the world, ending emissions of the gas of life, eroding people's liberty, blurring nations together, ending the nation state, moving us toward a one world totalitarian system, it's clearly satanic. Now, did the goober from the Communist Party who made this statue fully understand the implications of that? Probably not, right? I mean, the Bible talks about the people who've been taken captive by Satan to do his will. That probably applies to the poor guy who made this goofy statue. So we ought to be praying for them that God would show them the reality. But I really did appreciate the fact that the statue was there, because I think it just encapsulates so perfectly what's really going on here. A satanic, demonic spirit trying to hold the world in its hands, using nothing but lies to advance this idea.
Okay, let me throw an idea at you. The two horns. I think they represent Marxism, classic Marxism, and then Islamicism. What do you think of those two horns?
It could be, but because we're talking about Brazil and China, you might just say Marxism and Marxism.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Unfortunately, the Brazilian government is now fully in the control of the communists. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is an actual communist. And I've got him on video recently saying, "Oh, my critics say I'm a communist. I'm proud to be a communist." So yeah, he's proud to be a communist. He actually, while we were down there, he arrested his main political opponent, Jair Bolsonaro, who's a very decent, honorable man who loves the Lord. They basically, Lula staged a fake coup against himself. And so you have the Chinese Communist Party donating a statue to the communist government of Brazil. And but no, to your point, I do think that Islam is playing a very significant role in the evil takeover of the world that we're watching right now.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at Islam, when I look at Islamic theology, the fruit is very clear. First of all, we've seen this for well over 1,200 years. Endless people have lost their heads. Women treated worse than slaves. Their property. You strike the infidel wherever you find them. Jihad is our way. The whole world needs to submit to this deity called Allah. And this deity describes itself in these Islamic scriptures as the greatest of deceivers. I mean, that sounds familiar. So yeah, I don't think I need to say more, but very clearly, Islam, globalism, and communism. I call it the trifecta. That is working to demolish what's left of Christian civilization. That's working to demolish what's left of liberty and sovereignty and all the rest. And of course, they have their differences, right? Muslims want the world to be under the rule of Allah and the Ummah. Globalists want, of course, the world under the rule of themselves. Communists want the world under the rule of themselves. So I imagine there will be some struggles after they get us out of the way, assuming they succeed. But in the meantime, very clearly they're working together to take down the United States and to advance this one world cause.
Okay, so I'm contrasting between that symbol that you showed at COP30 with the UN back in 2022. They put out a beast from Oaxaca, Mexico. The beast, which I saw, was like a leopard, but with feet like those of a bear and a mouth like the mouth of a lion. To the dragon, it gave its power, the throne, and great authority from Revelation 13. Any thoughts on contrasting the two?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like somebody looked at those verses and decided to make a statue based on it. I grew up in Mexico. I spent more time living in Mexico than anywhere else in the world. And there's a lot of art like this that comes out of Oaxaca. And it has its origins in a lot of the old pagan mythologies of the native peoples that lived there. Before Hernan Cortes arrived in Mexico and basically conquered the Aztec Empire, they were worshiping demons. They were worshiping giant flying snakes. Quetzalcoatl was one of their key deities. They were sacrificing human beings on the top of their pyramids. In fact, in one weekend, they reportedly sacrificed 80,000 people on top of their Great Pyramid of the Sun. And so, we're seeing a revival of some of these spirits that were at least suppressed for a time with the advance of, you might say, Christianity and maybe the Catholic Church as well in some sense. And it's somewhat similar to what we saw in Europe. When the gospel spread out of the Middle East into Europe, Europe was still dominated by paganism. Infanticide, slavery, all of these things were very, very common. People were still worshiping demons openly. They had temples to demons all over the place. And as the gospel spread, as these horrific practices were suppressed, they didn't go away completely. They just went underground. They manifested themselves as art and culture and things like that.
Well, that's art right there, isn't it? That's art.
Art, I guess you could call it that. Yeah. So, but I mean, for me, the demonic overtones are very clear. And again, and that doesn't mean that the guy who did this necessarily understands what it really is supposed to be. But when you understand the world through the lens of the scriptures, Ephesians chapter 6, the powers and the principalities, the Apostle Paul actually calls Satan the god of this world. So suddenly, a lot of these things that just seem random and nonsensical actually make perfect sense.
Okay, let me move my mouse up here and move forward. What's up with this? Please turn away, people, if you're grossed out by this picture. But the orange plague, king of injustice. Alex, you snapped the picture. What's going on?
So we actually came across this monument right after we got done photographing the demonic dragon jaguar guardian spirit. So we show back up at the UN, and this thing is, and by the way, this is past the first line of security. So somebody within the UN system had to give permission for this thing to be put there. This wasn't just like out on a random street. This was something that the UN approved to have there, unless this guy snuck past, tanks and troops and massive amounts of security. But it was supposed to represent the evil Donald Trump. We actually interviewed the guy who made this. His name was Lasse Gensjold. I think he was a Danish guy. And he said, this symbolizes Trump oppressing us. He's imposing his agenda on all of us. We want climate solutions, and mean Trump won't let us have climate solutions. So Trump is imposing his agenda. And you see him riding on the back of this skeletal.
Oh, he's golfing. I didn't see that before. He's golfing.
Right. And across the thing, it says, I'll do whatever it takes to help this guy except step down. Right. And so it's supposed to represent evil Trump being, gluttonous and terrible and riding on the back of the world so that we can continue to
Orange Man bad.
Well, Orange Man bad.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
The Orange bad,
a slightly more sophisticated Orange Man bad. Yeah. Cheeto bad. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have to drag you into this. I'm sorry. But there are things going on between Ukraine and Russia where they're talking about a peace plan. And, we warn about the peace plan of 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Right now it says Ukraine accepts the peace plan, except won't stay neutral, wants NATO. Ukraine wants land back that Russia controls. Russia says, no, we want no NATO in Ukraine, keeps land with Russian-speaking population. You can kind of see the picture. Who's the Palpatine going on in this process, Alex?
Well, I'm not actually familiar with the term Palpatine, so I'll have to pass on that. But
okay,
is that from a movie? Is that a movie
not
reference?
Star Wars, yes.
Oh,
He's
okay.
the evil guy from the
See,
original.
I need to watch Star Wars, and people have been telling me that since I got back
it's
to the
a
United
nerdy
States.
comment, but there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm probably one of the last few people on the planet who hasn't watched it yet, but I will get there. I've got multiple friends who are determined that I'm going to watch it. But no, so what we're dealing with in Ukraine, I think, is an effort to foment conflict for conflict's sake. The globalists understand that conflict fuels globalism, always has, always will. And they've put this in paper, they've put this in official documents before. I believe that they want, if not Ukraine, Russia, then China, Taiwan, or Israel, Arabs, or North Korea, South Korea, something. They want some sort of hotspot, even if it's India and Pakistan, whatever it has to be, something that will result in large numbers of dead people, something that will cause massive conflict.
Who wants war? Who wants this?
Satan wants war,
okay,
because,
all right,
of course, it ends up with lots of people dead. But yes, the globalists want war. Back in 1962, Lincoln Bloomfield was hired by the U.S. State Department to write a report. The name of the report gave it all away. Was a world effectively controlled by the United Nations. And he concluded that organic processes would take hundreds of years before we could truly have a one world government controlled by the UN. But he said there's a catalyst where we can accelerate that process. And that catalyst, he said, is war or the threat of war. He said, if we can have war, we can make this process move much faster than it would otherwise. And that is historically what we have seen. World War I resulted in the birth of the League of Nations. The only reason that didn't flower and bloom was because the U.S. Senate wisely decided to keep us out. World War II gave birth to the United Abominations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the nucleus of what eventually became the European Union, the European Coal and Steel Community. So these things, these major international conflicts, he actually describes this in the 1962 report, have the effect of changing people's attitudes and allowing for what he describes as a revolution in public affairs. Because, after your children have been killed, after your grocery store has been empty for 6 months, after the lights are out of your house, your city's been firebombed, you've buried half your family, you're just at the end of your rope. He said, whatever it takes, make it stop. World government, fine. Just, make the grocery stores full again. Stop killing my babies and, leave us alone. So I think that really is the objective. A lot of people see Putin either as like this lone ranger, evildoer who's up to all this evil stuff.
Bad. Sure.
Yeah. Or the other way as like this savior of Western civilization who's defeating sometimes he calls the leaders of the West satanic pedophiles, which he's not wrong necessarily there, but the idea that Vladimir Putin is some sort of defender of Western civilization and Christianity is utterly preposterous. The guy was a young global leader of the World Economic Forum, as Klaus Schwab says. He was buddy with Henry Kissinger, who's I'm sure now rotting in hell. He's not a nice guy. Former head of the KGB, not a nice guy. So I think he is deeply connected with the elites. And if you look at what he's doing, right, forget what he says, because he does say things that make sense sometimes. The West is degenerate. The West is transing their children. The West is pushing homosexuality on kids in school. Isn't that disgusting? He's correct about a lot of what he says. But what is he doing? Well, he's waging a ruthless war against his neighbor, for one. And I'm not one of these people who think, well, Ukraine had it coming, whatever. What Putin has done in Ukraine is terrible. And second of all, he's building the Eurasian Union, which fits perfectly with the globalist plan to divide the world up into regional governments, smash national sovereignty, and then all these regional governments merge together. That was Kissinger's plan. That was Ibn Brzezinski's plan. That was Gorbachev's plan. And they talked about it openly. So Putin is following the script. Yes, he's the current boogeyman for the clown car that is Congress. But, I think he is willingly playing his part in this drama.
Let me read this to you.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, go, Courtney. Okay. So Promethean Action, I don't know if you know Susan Kokinda, but she just said this about an hour ago. Trump just locked the British Empire out of the Ukraine peace deals, and they're panicking. While the G20 pretends to matter, Trump secured a $1 trillion in deals and dismantling the war machine brick. So she's basically arguing that Europe is out of the program. Trump's going to conduct the peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia and just kick those guys out. Thoughts?
We'll have to see where this ends up. I think the European Union, despite being illegitimate and hostile to everything that Europeans once held dear, is still a very powerful player. One of the big things that came out of this COP30, to go back to the COP30 for a minute, was a big deal between the Brazilian regime and the European Union to integrate their domestic carbon markets to form the basis of eventually the global carbon market. And they both put out statements. The Ursula von der Leyen, the president of Europe, put out the statement about how important this was, that all the nations of the world integrate their carbon markets together. They have common standards, common verification and monitoring programs. So the EU is a critical player in all this. They're rolling out the digital wallet right now. I don't believe for 1 minute that they're truly going to be sidelined in any of this. And of course, the British are no longer officially part of the EU, although they still get most of their laws from what the bureaucrats do in Brussels, even though they've technically left the union. So I don't believe that the European Union is going to be cut out. I'd like to see Trump sideline some of these illegitimate players like the European Union. I'd like to see some of these things. So if I were a guy who went along with wishful thinking, I'd say, yeah, that's great. Let's sideline the EU. But honestly, the EU is going to become increasingly important, I think, in international affairs. They essentially are united in all things climate, right? When you look at the way they're negotiating at these summits, the EU negotiates as a bloc, right? And that is the eventual goal. Nation states will give way to these regional governments that then will all work together at the international level.
No Brexit then. Okay.
The Brexit's, I mean, I like the idea of Brexit, but did it really happen? I would argue no. It's the same way with Norway. They're technically not in the EU because they didn't want to share their oil money, and who can blame them? But they still automatically accept all European legislation as if it was their own, and they incorporate it into their domestic law. So the EU is still very much a force to be reckoned with. I regard it as a thoroughly undemocratic, thoroughly illegitimate institution. But the vast majority of the laws today that govern Europeans come from the European Union. They have very little say in that, by the way, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Okay, in Daniel 7:24 and Revelation 13 and Revelation 17, we talk about the 10 horns, the boogeymen, and everybody's always thought for the last 150 years they would be 10 EU kings. And I'm arguing, based on her comments here, that the new theory should be the 10 horns are big tech, like Courtenay talks about every single week. I mean, big tech is what's running the world, isn't it?
In a very real sense, yes. And it's going to become increasingly so. We're watching now, even decisions that people would have never have imagined outsourcing. Like, where should I go to dinner tonight? Google, tell me where to go to dinner tonight. Right? It's all being decided by these wicked, evil, degenerate companies and their AI systems. So that's very troubling. I gave a talk recently at a Prophecy Watch conference just a few weeks ago in Oklahoma, where I argued a different theory. To be clear, I won't claim to know this. I don't claim to have any special insight or anything. But when I read Daniel 7, when I look at Revelation 17, I could see how that could be 10 regional governments. And we're watching approximately 10 regional governments form right now. The European Union is just the premier example, but you've got the African Union, you've got Putin's Eurasian Union, you've got Mercosur in South America, you've got CELAC in the Caribbean and Central America and into Mexico. You've got the North American Union they've been trying to impose on us forever. You've got ASEAN. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So you've got the Pacific Islands Forum. You've got all these different regional governments that are forming, and 10 is a reasonable number for maybe a final. And they've been very clear that the eventual goal, Henry Kissinger talked about this in his book World Order in 2014. Eventually, all these regional orders, he said, will relate to one another and then go toward world order. So for me, that's
it has to be world.
As any. Yep.
You're going to go world. Okay. Yep. Good. Not EU.
There was also the Club of Rome regional and adaptive globalization. I forgot the end of it, but yeah, and they mapped out, and it was 10 regions, and it was the same regions that are in the Bible, and the same.
Club of Rome. You're right. Okay, so this is a quote that just came out today. Europe is not involved because the United States has not seen the need to involve Europe in these negotiations, from Keir Giles. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I assume they're talking about Ukraine.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, unless and until the Europeans are willing to back up some of all this bluster with military might, I mean, why are you even talking to them, right? What are they going to do? Write a strongly worded statement? Oh no, right? So I mean, the Europeans are really, in that sense, not really a force to be reckoned with when it comes to these issues of war or peace. They depend almost entirely right now on the U.S. military for their security.
Sure.
If they were wise, they would want to end that dependence immediately. Partly because I don't think the United States is a reliable partner, partly because we don't know who's going to be president after Donald Trump, partly because they don't know if Donald Trump would actually come and defend them if they needed it. So, but yeah, from a military perspective, the EU has not really been much of a force. They essentially depend on the United States to help them in anything that they need. So.
Okay, a couple of points about the peace plan then. The U.S. peace plan was not discussed in Abu Dhabi. And by the way, this is RT. Russia has not yet discussed the U.S. peace plan. Russia has not officially received the U.S. peace plan. This is like just a few hours ago, too. So is this just world peace instead of peace? What is it, Alex?
Well, again, we'll have to see what comes out of this over the next few days. We've heard multiple times, even in the last few months, that we're getting closer to a peace plan. I would like to see a peace plan. Blessed are the
Okay.
peacemakers, says Jesus Christ. But
Yep.
is this going to be it? I don't know. Is the Ukrainian government going to accept permanently giving up a lot of territories? Are they going to accept permanently not being allowed to join with Western globalist institutions? I don't know. As long as they still have men that they can feed into the meat grinder, I don't see it happening in the immediate future, but we'll see.
So you're not planning a vacation to Ukraine in the near future, right?
I am not. No, I haven't been to Ukraine since 2018, and I don't intend to return
Okay.
anytime in the near future.
Okay. On the right-hand side, European countries are preparing for an emergency plan B to keep Ukraine funded if the deal on using Russia's frozen assets fails. With peace talks intensifying, Kyiv's cash crunch makes the issue urgent. I'm saying sex, lies, and politics. They have a backdoor plan. What do you think?
Probably, but I mean, the Europeans are in quite a bit of financial trouble themselves right now. They have dismantled their industries and shipped it all to China. They've blown up their power plants. I mean,
Yeah.
they're dealing with millions and millions of migrants that they invited in on welfare now who don't contribute anything to the treasury. They've got some pretty serious financial problems of their own. It'll be interesting to see where they think they're just going to conjure all this money up. And frankly, the idea of using money that they stole from other people, that doesn't strike me like a very good idea either. As much as I don't like the Russian government, you can't just steal their stuff. That's kind of crazy. So,
So who's running Europe? Is it Ursula von Leyen or whatever, I'm blanking on their name, or is it Klaus Schwab? That's the guy in the middle there that's kind of poking out from behind the curtains. So who's running Europe?
well, it's very much like most of the rest of the world. Ursula von der Leyen is the face of the government of Europe. A lot of people attribute the government of Europe to the bureaucrats in the European Commission. And in fairness, they do have a lot of power, far more than the European pseudo parliament, which isn't actually a true legislative body. But really, the people who run Europe are the same people who run, unfortunately, the United States of America and have for a very long time. It's the people that I wrote about in my book, Deep State, the Invisible Government Behind the Scenes, the folks that go to Bilderberg, the folks that are involved in the Council on Foreign Relations or the Chatham House, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, the Bohemian Grove, the Skull and Bones, the rest of the weirdos. Those are the kinds of people that are actually running things behind the scenes. They like to have political puppets out front so that people can get mad and have their 2 minutes of hate with Emmanuel Goldstein. But really, behind the scenes are where the real power players are. So no, Ursula von der Leyen is not running Europe. She's doing what she's told.
Now, Alex and Courtney, you get 50 points each if you can guess George H.W. Bush's nickname at Skull and Bones at Yale years ago. Do you know his nickname?
I knew this, and it's escaping me right now.
Magog.
That's right. Yep.
Think about that.
What
And
was it?
Magog, Gog and Magog. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you lost your 50 points, but that's fine. So so is this a picture of the world right now? Are they kissing his ring, or is this just a temporary thing?
I think it's a temporary thing. I think they're actually getting ready right now to stab him in the back. I actually think that the whole house of cards is going to come crashing down here very soon. And that was very evident to me at the COP30. I mean, even among traditional U.S. allies, Trump is seen as uh, uh, terrible, terrible person who needs to be stopped at all costs. They
Okay.
hate him with a passion. So, he's riding high right now, sort of. But when you see the Europeans and the Brazilians and the Chicoms and the Russians all doing deals to sideline the United States, that doesn't bode well for us. I think they're getting ready to kick off a revolution, maybe a civil war in this country, and leave Trump out to dry. And actually, there's an office right now that's been set up in The Hague under the UN Development Program that I have on good authority from a source within the United Nations. They're working on figuring out criminal charges to bring against Trump in the future. So,
Oh man. Okay. So let's pretend, Alex, you have $1 billion in your pocket and you want to invest it, and you hear the BRICS nations are setting up their own banks and they'll have their own currency. Would you give them your money? Would you trust Russia,
never.
China? Never.
Absolutely not one penny. Even if I did trust them and think it was a good investment, I wouldn't do it because I'm not interested in funding my own demise. But no, I would not. I would probably buy a farm and some precious metals, some lead, some beans, redundant water systems, and that's probably what I would do if I had some money to invest. So
You're not investing in BRICS. Okay. That's
no.
right from the horse's mouth. Okay. So the bottom line is we're in a mess right now. We're treading water until Trump is done being and is he the king of the world? Would you agree with that?
No, I did talk to a guy from Guinea-Bissau at COP30 who, when I told him Trump said climate change was a scam, he's like, "What? Trump's the king of the world. We can't disagree with Trump." He was very, very up on the climate thing, though. But no, Trump is not the king of the world. On paper, I think he's officially the most powerful man in the world, but I don't really think that's the case. I don't think he is fully on board with the globalists, and I know there are plenty of people of goodwill who disagree with me, who think he's playing us all for fools, and he may be. I can't say for certain one way or the other. But I know some of the people who work with him, and I believe he's being deceived on some critical issues. But really, Jesus is the King of all kings. But
Okay.
at the moment, I think the biblical understanding of the nature of reality is that Satan is walking around seeking whom he may devour, lying, cheating, stealing, and he's got a lot of power right now. He's blinded the minds of them which believe not, and frankly, I think that's really what we're dealing with.
Okay. Can you stay a few more minutes or do you need to go?
Yeah, maybe a couple more minutes, but I got to drop off
Okay.
shortly
All
after
right.
that. So
So it's my opinion, and this is a Joelism, that we've got an issue with the North Pole kind of moving, okay, and the South Pole too. And so this is from Electroverse, and they're saying that Europe is going through a cold phase. This is their worst November in 15 years. And I'm saying that's because the pole is moving. That's Isaiah 24, 16 through 23, talking about the wobbling like a drunken fool. And so did they talk about the pole shift at all during COP30?
I didn't hear anything about it. I have heard people talking about this in the past. Honestly, I don't know enough about it to comment responsibly, but I did not hear anybody talking about it at COP.
Okay, so then let's move on. So this is, I'll show you the articles, but basically there are two systems that are working that we're noticing that are failing. So the AMOC is the Atlantic Meridian Overturned Current, and that's collapsing fast. The SMOC, which is the Southern Meridian, that's reversing. So what used to be warm in Europe during the wintertime might be cold, frighteningly cold. And I believe Russia's aware of this. Did anybody talk about the MOC or the SMOC at COP30?
I didn't hear anything about it at COP30. I have heard from people about the possibility that the Gulf Stream may be slowing down or getting messed up, which, my wife is from Scandinavia. I lived many years in Scandinavia. That would be beyond catastrophic for the Scandinavians.
Oh, horrible.
So, yep.
I'm on the 45th parallel. They're on the 50th parallel. We get cold up here. Maybe you've noticed we just got snow, blizzards and things like that. Well, here, let's just pass you along to the next one. So this is from Reuters, both established good news sources. Climate scientists claim Gulf Stream could be near collapse, bringing a new ice age. Okay. And on the right-hand, well, actually, it's New York Post says there could be a European by 60 degrees Fahrenheit if this AMOC collapses. And then Iceland is deeming this as a nuclear threat to them. Basically, that they're going to have this current collapse. So these are actually scientific reports, and I've got enough information from my sources that say it's true. But nobody talked about it at COP30, right?
I didn't hear anybody talk about it. Nope.
This is stupid. They should be talking about this, you
Yeah.
know. And this would force Russia to do some horrible things, because if we believe the pole is moving, and I'll show you. Well, actually, I'll go back to it right here. That shows the pole is moving towards Russia. So Russia is going to be sliding across the magnetic North Pole. So in this case, we're going to get warmer, okay, on the United States side, and we'll start heading towards Brazil, believe it or not. And Russia is going to go into the icebox and die. So they're going to have to do something. Would that possibly explain the Ukraine war?
Interesting. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Don't know enough about it, but we shall see, huh?
Okay. And then, so this is the big picture of the currents and how they work. They're collapsing, they're reversing, they're failing. And what you just said to me was they're not talking about it at COP30. And this is the most disastrous thing, in addition to what the sun does to us. Did anyone talk about the sun even once during COP30?
I didn't hear him except when I asked him about Dr. Willie Soon's peer-reviewed papers showing that total solar irradiance could easily explain all of the tiny observed increase in warmth. No, I didn't hear anybody talking about the sun either.
Bingo. That's
Mm,
it. It's the sun that drives much of our weather.
yeah.
So the bottom line is COP30 is just lying to us. They're
Of
gaslighting,
course.
we'll call it. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
it is. That's exactly right.
So from my standpoint, once again, I live on the 45th parallel almost exactly, and I run out every 5.9 months, which is the Riger cycle, and view amazing auroras now that I've never seen before in my life, and I'm kind of old. So the bottom line is our magnetosphere has thinned by what we believe is up to 30%. And that's causing the poles to shift and move, wobble, and the currents to overturn and reverse. So no one's talking about that at COP30. Nobody's talking about the sun, the magnetosphere, anything like that.
Nope. Nope. All we're talking about is dismantling civilization. So, and I better drop off, Joel.
Okay,
But
all right,
hey, it's
Courtney,
been a real
you're the
pleasure.
show.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Courtney. God
Alex.
bless you
Yep,
guys, and
this
we'll
was
catch
fun.
up soon.
Okay, take care.
You.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
Let me switch this over, and we'll bring Courtney into the screen here a little bit
Okay.
bigger. So,
Oh,
Courtney, would you tell the people again who you are? You haven't been on for a while. So,
yes,
who are you?
I'm Courtenay Turner. I'm the host of the Courtenay Turner podcast, and I am also the co-author of this book, The Final Betrayal. It is a cautionary tale, how technocracy destroyed America, and my co-author there is Patrick Wood. And I also
Tell the people about Patrick Wood. They may know him.
Yes, I will tell them 1 second. Wait, I
Okay,
didn't get a
sure.
chance to show Alex, but I have the copy now in my hand of the latest New American. This is November issue, and if you'll see my name on there, I'm the
You
first
go.
article on the Dark Enlightenment. So I should encourage people to get that. I worked really hard on that article, and I think it is really important. So Patrick Wood is the living expert on technocracy. He
Yes.
has been sounding the alarm really for decades. He wrote the books with the Anthony Sutton several decades ago, Trilaterals over Washington. And then he wrote the first book on technocracy, I think it was 2011. I don't know the exact year, but yeah, at least around 15 years ago. So yeah, he has technocracy.news, which is also where you can get a great discount if you buy more than one book at his website. So, yeah, and he has tons of articles on there and been warning us for a long time. I keep telling him I really wanted him to be wrong, but here we are.
And he found you, or you found him, and so you're on shows with him now frequently.
Yeah, well, we've done shows for the past several years. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And so he's not a friend of mine, but he's a friend of my friends. So I know
okay.
John Haller, and John's part of that clique and does the technology show with them. I don't know if you've worked with John Haller yet. Have you?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The name. What was the
John
name?
Haller has his own prophecy show every
Okay.
Sunday morning,
Okay.
and he's tight with Patrick Wood. So he's on
Okay.
that technology show. In fact,
Okay.
I don't know who's hosting it. I think it's John that hosts it.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Roundtable. Okay.
I'm familiar with the show, but yeah, I haven't connected with him. Yeah.
Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, John Haller, some other guy. They're all tech guys, so well,
Awesome.
Haller is not. He's an attorney, but he's a smart guy.
Awesome.
So you're
All right.
connected with those guys indirectly, but directly with Patrick Wood. You're writing with him, researching with him. And let's face it, tech is busy right now. I kind of had to say something about the fact that you're on almost every week or posting on X constantly about tech because it's overwhelming now. I mean, it used to be like there was a story every month or two, maybe every year or two. Oh, it's every day, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely accelerating. That's the term, accelerationism. We're seeing it.
Do you agree with the statement from Eric Schmidt that we'll see rampant robots by 2027?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think robots are definitely coming. I mean, the Optimus is already pretty much ready. So it's just a matter of it becoming scalable to where, multiple people can have it. Right now, they're pretty expensive. I think one Optimus is about $20,000.
Yeah.
So, most people can't afford an Optimus right now. But if they can get the price down, I do think that it's going to become much more commonplace. And there are a lot of competitors. So there's Neo, which is like a direct competitor to Optimus.
Okay.
That one has like the mesh, and it's not as agile, so it's focused. It's strengths are in different areas, but there's also this company I think called Realbotics. I might be blanking on the name, but it's something like that, where they're focused more on very human-like robots,
Okay.
and so they look more human, and they're being trained for like fields like hospitality or therapy, which is very concerning to me. But yeah, they're trained to be very human-like. So
And
there are
so
different types of robots. Yeah.
And so basically, if you build a good robot with the proper mechanics, then you can put in the software, but you can version the software. I was a software guy, so we would be versioning every 18 months at a minimum, and so you can version the software anytime you want to, and make this robot go to AGI, artificial general intelligence, and then
Mhm.
eventually onto artificial super intelligence. Eric Schmidt is telling us AGI by 2027 and ASI again by 2031. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, they're also talking about having the robots build robots. So, I
Yes.
mean, Elon's already working on that. He talks about that all the time. So, as far as I mean, there's mixed thoughts on all of this. Some
Right.
of these transhumanists believe that they've already achieved sentience. So they think that they're already in the.
Take it back. Take it back. What does sentience mean to you?
Well, I don't believe that it's possible for a machine to have sentience. I definitely don't think they have achieved it as of now. I don't think they will. I think they will try to convince us that they've achieved sentience.
Okay.
And they're right now they're doing a lot of research on machine consciousness. The
Sure.
last technocracy roundtable, we do them once a month. We are going to skip December.
Oh, you are? Okay.
We'll skip December, and we'll start back up in January.
Okay.
But it's just difficult timing with the holidays and everything. But so the last one we did, though, we talked about the California Institute of Machine Consciousness,
Oh,
and Joshua Bach talks about machines having consciousness, which is essentially sentience, right? The
right.
That's what I would say sentience is having a consciousness.
So basically, they'll have super intelligence. They'll have data at their fingertips, and when I type into Grok right now, it has my answer in a millisecond. But
Mhm.
then there is that area I'm going to call that super intelligence, that sentience that you've been describing. I'm going to call that neshama in the Hebrew. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with that Hebrew word.
I don't know if I am.
Okay, so basically, the body, according to Genesis 2:7, is made of three components. The Adama, the afar, we'll call it rather. So that would be the dust of the ground. Okay, and so you could think of silicon in some ways, but
Right.
we're
Okay.
obviously more than just silicon. And then the other piece is the animal soul. We call that the nefesh. And so that is kind of like a program. So I would assume that God would build us like a program. We'd be like dogs and cats and things like that. We would just have a higher ability, and that would be the neshama. And according to my Hebrew, and I don't know if I can find it here at all.
Mhm.
Rats. I'm in the Hebrew, but unfortunately, I'm in the wrong book. Okay, Hebrew Revelation, which basically says that this critter that they're going to make, this image of the beast, will be given a neshama, which is that higher consciousness. And that's kind of frightening. I realize you don't believe in it. I didn't believe in it until I saw it in the Hebrew.
Well, I mean, I don't think that it will achieve consciousness. Now, if you are thinking about it in terms of a spiritual realm, and some of the transhumanists say this, that it becomes a vessel where
Right.
spirits could inhabit.
Yep.
So, I mean, that I wouldn't rule that out. That's certainly that's above my pay grade as to being able to certify that. but I could conceive that that could be possible for sure. But that's not the same thing as the machine itself achieving sentience, which is
Right.
what they're talking about. They're talking about that we have to parent the AGI so that it becomes benevolent. And they're talking about doing, I mean, Ben Goertzel is working on this participatory framework for an AGI global constitution.
Hmm.
And so that is the term that they use, is to parent the AGI. And that he's not the only one who's saying this. He just happens to be working on a global constitution at the moment, which
Okay.
I find very concerning, because they say that the AGI might have better ethics than humans do. And so therefore because they'll be better stewards of the planet. And so therefore we might have to be subordinate to the AGI. Because they've been parented to be benevolent and good stewards of the planet, and we're polluting and doing all sorts of terrible things. So we will now become subordinate, and this becomes quite I think very problematic when you start to think about ethics and human rights, because now we're talking about, well, do the AI have rights, and should they have more rights than humans? And that's essentially what they're saying. So
Yes. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. One more picture about the dragon, so to speak. This is from this is 30 Rock, Rockefeller Center in New York, from a few years ago. I don't. What I'm asking you about is, are these spirits out there? Are they Babylonian spirits? I mean, have you ever heard that maybe these spirits could just move on through time and they can't be killed, so to speak?
Well, I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I'm open to that possibility. I don't claim to know. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Let me go ahead and change my slides out so people can see it a little bit better. So I'll just
Okay.
read a little bit about this. So
So,
they just erected this lovely dragon outside Rockefeller Center in New York. First, the mixed animal beast in front of the UN. Now this, the great dragon, was thrown out, the ancient serpent. I'll use the Hebrew term Nakash, which is from Genesis 3. Also known as the devil and Satan, the adversary, the deceiver of the whole world. He was hurled down to earth, and his angels were hurled down with him. And so it seems as though somebody's trying to tell us, they're broadcasting what is going to occur in our lives at some point in time by showing these dragons here and the other beasts that we showed you with Alex on just a few minutes ago. Any
mhm,
thoughts about the people that run the world telegraphing what they're going to do to us?
mhm. Right.
Anything? Nothing? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're. It's possible. I don't claim to have the answers on that.
Yeah, you're not best friends with the people that run the world, the 12 or 13 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't get the inside scoop on any of that. So I don't put it past them, though. I mean, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. So, and this is interesting. This was seen in a Walmart just a few years ago. It's a Revelation beast. It's got the horns and everything like that. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting how these things are popping up more and more and more. And this is outside the UN. This is that green horse, the fourth horseman of
Wow.
Revelation 6:8, and it's just sitting there in their little garden area right next door to the UN in their sculpture garden. And green horseman, there you go. Revelation 6:8. I won't
Yeah.
read it to you because, well, actually the print is small, but I can read it to you. But
Yeah, it's a little too small for me too.
yeah,
Um,
okay,
but I mean, the UN's right, their consultancy is Lucius Trust, right, which was
right,
with Lucifer Publishing. So
yes.
they very much do believe in an inverted framework. So it's the inversion of the Bible. It's a Gnostic framework.
Oh, they would actually believe in inverting it, not just making something new. They would invert.
Yeah, no, they invert. They don't.
Okay.
It's not new. I don't think anything they do is new. It's just an inversion. they talk about how Satan and Lucifer, both Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, say that Lucifer, Satan, is the real God. So
Oh,
they say that explicitly in their writings.
and I should warn everybody, Courtney and I spent a lot of time during the summertime because there was this weird thing where we had the blood moon eclipse of March. And then on June 11th, the Luciferians got together for the Bilderberg and also the Lucis Trust people. And it was a conference on that full moon, okay, on June 11th. And we figured they
Centennial
would do,
Conclave.
yeah, the conclave. So do you, it's been a few months. Have you seen anything coming out from that conclave or the Bilderbergs?
Oh, well, I mean, they had all those globalist meetings. The Bilderbergs
Yeah,
met, the UN met, I think the
yeah,
Trilateral Commission met. So,
oh yeah,
I mean, there were a bunch of globalists who got together during that specific week, right around World Invocation Day. So, yeah, if we're battling the powers and principalities, it would seem they were certainly operating through them. I don't know.
yes, yes. Okay, so I'm trying to tie this Moloch and Baphomet in with Mystery Babylon, in with evil spirits seem to be inhabiting either buildings or objects or whatever else. And have you ever done any of those types of studies? Have you ever seen anything tied through with Mystery Babylon, say?
In terms of imagery, like symbols.
Yeah, and also possibly the demonic. I mean, they're conjuring, they're imprecating, things like that. Have you ever
Well,
heard or read anything about that?
I kind of feel like that's what's going on with all this AI stuff.
Oh, you'd go that way with it. Okay, sure, that works.
I mean, that kind of seems like they're recreating Babylon.
So it's kind of a Babylon system. It's a world system that will
Yeah,
rule us like Babylon.
yeah, it is.
Okay. Uh,
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the whole beast system seems that way to me.
It does. That's why I always think it's big tech. And it's interesting that you and Alex both thought it may be regional governments, and yes, it could be both. But I really think the ones with the power will be big tech. It'll be 10, probably big tech billionaires for me, but there will be also regional governments, obviously.
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing the regional governments as a part of the beast system, right?
Sure.
You're seeing various technates, which so when I was talking about it was part of the limits to growth, that regionalized adaptive zones that the Club of Rome did in 1972. And that map, they call it now, they call it the 10 Kingdoms map. So it's the same
Mhm.
map that of the 10 regions in the Bible. But it's
Okay.
also very akin to the maps in the Technocracy Inc. That they had the technate when Trump's talking about acquiring Greenland and annexing
Yep.
Canada and the
Yep.
Mexico. I mean, that is the North American Union that was the technate. So I think I don't know that they're separate, right? The AI World Society is talking about how we will no longer have human governments; they will all be supplanted by AI. And if you look at what they're doing, I mean, even in this country, we have, these digital governance summits in most states. I don't know if
Yep.
every state has it yet, but they're moving that direction. And then when you look at what Trump is doing with his Genesis plan, the AI action plan, uh, Senator Cruz just did the Sandbox Act. So it does look like, I mean, in the East, you already have some of these regionalized zones with in terms of AI, right? Like, I
Yes.
mean, China is basically
I know.
already a technate.
Oh, yeah.
Russia is actually quite a surveillance state. A lot of people don't realize
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, so I don't think that they're exclusive, right? I don't think it's mutually exclusive. The governments could be convening around these regions, these 10 regions, and that it could be the technates that will be the ultimate.
You could
And then
work that together. You could. They would
yeah,
be
and
given
then
their
they would
regions.
form, I mean, they would essentially be the beast system, the antichrist
Yeah.
system that merges into the one world governance structure and the one world religious structure as well. So I don't know that they're not aligned. I don't think
They
those
might be. That is interesting. Now I have to readjust my theory. So I'll work on that. So let's do this. Will you have a conversation about the digital dollar? So with AI getting more powerful and with financial currencies crashing, will they just throw a digital dollar at us? And when, how, why? What do you think, Courtney?
Well, I encourage people to read The Final Betrayal because we have a whole chapter actually on this, talking about the regulatory infrastructure that is following this Genius Act that Trump already signed. And now we've got the Clarity Act and the Stable Act that are not far behind. They have not been signed into yet, but they are still pending.
Can
And
you show that book again, please? The Great
it,
Betrayal?
yes, I can. It is The Final Betrayal.
The
So,
Final Betrayal.
yes, The
Okay.
Final Betrayal.
And you wrote that with Patrick Wood, who we talked
Mhm.
about before. So he's
Yeah,
a scholar
yeah,
and brilliant. And so you
yeah.
must have just published this recently.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago that we
Yeah.
launched, yeah. So,
Okay, cool. Good for
um,
you.
but we do have a whole chapter in the book on the, regulatory infrastructure that's laying the groundwork for tokenization, and that's, really does seem to be where they're headed. Uh,
Okay.
if you hear people like Larry Fink, who is now the co-chair of the World Economic Forum, he practically sounds like he's salivating at the idea of tokenizing everything. And this regulatory infrastructure with this Genius Act and Clarity Act and Stable Act is laying the groundwork for essentially a digital dollar. It's a fiat of a fiat. And
Okay.
it lays the groundwork to be able to tokenize, which is what Larry Fink and Besant and a bunch of these guys are saying they want.
Interesting. Well, I think that was a good answer, Courtney. Thank you. Wow, it's
Mhm.
frightening. I didn't real well, I'll have to pick up your book. Okay.
It's a
I
very easy read. It's not a light read. I will warn people that it's not for the faint of heart, but it is an easy read. It was very important to Patrick that this be a short book and a very accessible book.
How many
So
pages again? How many pages?
it is a 169. However, no, it's a I think okay, it's 153. So,
Oh, that's easy. Yeah.
however, a lot of it is references, and this is there are actually chapters where there are more references than content in the chapter. So it was really designed for people it's as a big overview, like a 50,000-foot overview that people can take, and then if they want to do a deeper dive, there's all these sources and they can go sleuthing for themselves. But we wanted to give people kind of the bird's eye view so that they know what's going on because it's called The Final Betrayal because where our thesis is that they really hijacked the MAGA movement. And the concept of MAGA is great, make America great again. I don't have any arguments with that. However, I think that when people thought they were voting for MAGA, what they thought they were going to get was maybe a restoration of the Constitution, some restoration of founding principles, and get closer to the vision for this great experiment as we approach the 250th anniversary of the United States of America.
It
And
is.
unfortunately, what it looks like is they used that momentum, that energy, in order to do a coup and hand it over to Silicon Valley.
Could you show the book one more time, please?
Yes, yes,
So this is
mm,
fresh. Final Betrayal, and it's
yes,
you and Patrick Wood,
yes,
and yeah, there you
yeah.
go. That's exciting. Good for you. Good for you. So
Thank
people,
you.
I recommend that book, and I'll have to go pick it up. What's it about? $25 or so?
Yes, it's yeah, I think it's a 23.95. It's like 24 on Amazon. And then we also so Amazon, it does have a Kindle option as well.
Oh, okay.
And then it's also on Patrick Wood's website, technocracy.news at the store.
Sure.
And that's a great place to go if you want to buy more than one copy, they'll get a discount on that. And
Sure.
then there is also this is really great option for anybody who doesn't want to go to Amazon, but also for those who are outside the country. If you are outside the United States, the shipping and the tariffs can be quite exorbitant through
Oh, yeah.
Amazon. So if you go to books.buy forward
Yeah.
slash Patrick Wood, then you will only pay $5 for the shipping. So that's a
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds great.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. So, what am I trying to prove with this picture? I'm trying to prove that there's this Babylon aspect that moved along from Babylon to Asia Minor to Nuremberg to Germany.
Mhm.
And so it's the seat of Satan. And then I'm arguing that that's 2008 in Denver with number 44. You know which president that is or was, and so that backdrop for him is that seed of Satan. So we'll show you. Whoop! I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. Mouse working again.
Pergamon.
Pergamum. There you go. Whoop! There it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I'll go back to that slide.
Pergamon is also Pergamon Press. Isn't that Robert
Really?
Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father?
Oh, ick. Really? Seriously?
Yeah, that's his
Ugh.
publishing company,
Speaking
Pergamon
of
Press.
which, that makes my skin crawl. So keep this in mind. According to the Qumran fragments, watchers had a serpentine appearance. So watchers are fallen angels. And so if they have the ability to omni whatever, in terms of appearance. And so they can look like humans, they can look like angels, they can look like fire, they can also look like serpents. Keep that in mind. So basically what I'm arguing is there's a Babylonian connection that goes all the way through uh with Ghislaine Maxwell too, but
Mhm.
to Pergamum and then to Berlin, but obviously in Asia Minor. So Babylon, Asia Minor to Berlin to Nuremberg to Denver. There seems to be a spiritual ascendancy working all the way through evil, all the way from Babylon to 2008, at least, if not in the future. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's they're very. It seemed totally plausible. Oh,
And so here, I'll state it more technically then. The
okay.
fallen angels, the watchers, inherently exist as a flame of fire, but could take on the appearance of a man with a physical form when cohabiting with women. So that would be Genesis 6:4. But they can also be serpentine. So natural form, the flame of fire. Human form, they appeared in human form and they lusted after human women and had offspring with them. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were giants, okay, according to what many people believe. And I'm basically citing Heiser in my own words. But there's no omnimorphism. The text does not suggest a limitless ability to shapeshift into any animal or object form. Their ability seems limited to their natural fiery state, human state, or the serpentine state. So it's just interesting how you hear these comments about people that they have serpentine eyes or they have
Mhm.
serpentine features and things like that. If they are a watcher, they could look like humans, and then they could kind of shift.
Mhm.
If have you ever heard of that at all? Have you ever discussed that or researched
I
it?
have heard it. I mean, I don't know. Like I really have. I know there's theories about like the lizard people. I
Yeah,
yeah. It's not something because there's not enough evidence. Like I can't. That's not something I could prove. So it's not. It hasn't been a focus of my research.
that's fine. Yeah, you're normally the thought behind the thought. You're a philosopher, and I get it.
Yeah.
One little phrase from Heiser, I quote him all the time. Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And so there seems to be this process all the way through the Bible. There were three rebellions: Genesis 3, Genesis 6, Genesis 10 and 11 with Babylon. And then there seems to be these creatures that were born that are half spirit and half human. And so I'm arguing that in some cases with Revelation 13, that you're going to have that big tech combination of, you know, human and AI, and somehow it's going to work together. I don't know, Courtney.
That's very likely. I mean, they're hard at work on that, and they've talked extensively about it. Nick Land calls them the technoplastic beings. So I mean, that kind of
There you
sums it
go.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're doing. I mean, you remember in Canada there was Policy Horizons the Policy Horizons document in 2020. It was called Biodigital Convergence, and then the NBIC document which talks about the nano bio. It's essentially biodigital convergence. Cognitive is the C, but that was in 2002. So I
okay.
mean, this stuff is well underway. There's tons of research being done on it. They have a SynCon conference every year, which is essentially synthetic biology. So they're very hard at work working on these essentially cyborgs. There's a
Yeah.
lot of evidence that that's what Epstein was working on, his transhumanist, and that's what my article, the Epstein transhumanist conspiracy, was about. All the
It,
funding that he did for a transhuman agenda.
it's actually biblical. It's Genesis
Mhm.
6:4 with the Nephilim, and that's in the text, in the Hebrew text. And
Yeah.
then they die and they become demons. And so there is this, it is biblical, it's weird, but there is this hybridization of the AI, so to speak, and the humanity. And then we have some creature that was never supposed to be built. And you're saying that other people are talking about this too, this cyborgization
Yeah.
of,
Oh yeah,
okay,
this is in mainstream like mainstream scientific literature. They're doing tons of research on it. The whole that California Institute of Machine Science of Machine Consciousness that I was talking about. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about merging man and machine. They're talking about making. They're using what they call like brain organoids.
okay,
Essentially, to take like human stem cells, not brain cells, but human stem cells,
stem
to
cells,
try
sure.
and replicate the brain and brain activity in order to try and create some sort of a synthetic, yeah, to make us merge with silicon, essentially.
So that's what a Nephilim would be then. It's a merger between an angel and a human woman. And then so you're basically preaching the same thing, but it's
Well,
more modern days. It's
yeah,
still,
and in China, they have robo wombs already.
oh, ick.
Like the robots are wombs. They have ecto-life pods. I mean that was a few years ago, but now they have robo wombs. So, and they're actually cheaper than IVF. So
Oh,
people
ick.
are, yeah. So that's so they're having robots incubate children, and they're also talking about robots having offspring. So I know I saw something, and I didn't do enough research on it to give you the details, but where out of like inorganic material, they claim they've created life, and I don't know enough of the details on that, but it's very much what they're working on. I can say that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not going to. Well, you know what? I do want to get your opinion because it's like two more slides. So
Okay.
you might enjoy this rabbit trail.
Mhm.
So this is Gilgamesh in
Okay.
terms of probably Nimrod's time frame from Babylon. And so George Smith went out and did the investigations back in 1872, and he thinks he found the tomb of Gilgamesh basically underneath the Euphrates River. Okay. And that sounds like Revelation 9 and 16 in terms of the Euphrates River, the angels, the four angels underneath there, things like that. So, but, and according to, well, you can see what the lion looks like. He looks like a puppy dog compared to Gilgamesh, who's huge. He's a Nephilim of some sort, or a chimera, or something like that. Okay. And so here's another picture, two heroes fighting. So this is basically taken from the Gilgamesh story, and so fighting with the god of the cedar forest, and huge and chimera like and things like that, kind of revelation like. So I'll read this to you just so you can see the comparison between what you're seeing in the picture and what the Bible states. And this is the sixth trumpet of Revelation chapter 9. And I saw horses in the vision, and those sitting upon them having breastplates of fire and jacinth and brimstone, and heads of the horses are as heads of lions, and out of their mouths proceeded fire and smoke and brimstone. It looks like a chimera of some sort, kind of human, kind of whatever,
Mhm.
AI maybe. Okay. And then, so this is where we have some fun with this. As I mentioned before, H.W. Bush was known as Magog at Yale in Skull and Bones. Okay. And it's not directly provable, but it looks like W. Bush was Gog. So very interesting. So back in 2003, I think that somebody pulled Bush off doing, well, basically, they had found the tomb of Gilgamesh and they were going to open it in March, April of 2003. And W. Bush immediately launched the war and destabilized Iraq. So nothing's been done for the last 20 some years. Do you have any thoughts about the Bush family, about bloodlines, about power and about Gilgamesh? Anything, Courtney?
I don't actually know enough about Gilgamesh to comment on that, but I do know that Skull and Bones was created by the relative of Alfonso Taft, our President Taft,
Oh,
as
okay.
well as Herbert Russell,
Okay.
who was tied to. It was the 11th Duke of Bedford that
Hmm,
donated the building for the Tavistock Clinic in 1920, and
okay.
it was his relative who started Skull and Bones. So, yeah, that's just a little trivia
Is
on
it
that, but
evil or is it just a bunch of guys drinking beer?
oh, no, this is I mean, they're a death cult.
Oh,
That's
they are.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, they're definitely that's yes.
That's
And
cool.
they're tied to I did a whole video series on this actually, and, Charlotte Idjabit and, Anthony Sutton are great resources on this.
Okay.
Anthony Sutton has a whole and I did a video on this, he has a whole
Okay.
section in his book on the Order of Skull and Bones, on how the order controls education. And
Oh,
I went through that lineage, through the Ivy Leagues and through Johns Hopkins, and yeah, so the order and Charlotte used to talk about it as well. They actually shared a lot of research on that because Charlotte's uh, father and grandfather were members of Skull and Bones, and so they were already communicating on like research on Russia and the Russian, Cold War collusion, essentially. But they were already doing that research and working together. And then he wanted the little black book,
okay.
and Charlotte had the book with the essentially the Rolodex of the names, and so she lent it to him for him to write the book.
And they're all bus buddies too. Even though Kerry ran against Bush,
Yep.
it looks like Kerry was the class of 66 and Bush was 68, and they know each other,
Well,
obviously.
yeah, I mean, there was that awkward, like, the secret, well, we can't talk about it because that's a secret society, Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's there. It's a secret handshake. Yep.
So basically, what I'm getting at is that Gilgamesh was a 17-foot tall giant, and they were going to find his grave and basically release whatever it was, when they would open up the tomb back in April of 2003. March 20th, we declared war on Iraq, and so if anything was going to occur, it was ceased. And now it's been a few years, and there will be at some point in time this sixth trumpet where these angels from underneath the Euphrates will pop out. So it's just very interesting to have Bush tied in with it. And yeah, so the Iraq War, shortly after the survey halted further archaeological work at the site for many years. So no, we're not going to go through that because that's just too much. But basically, here, let me just take it back to you here. Let me get this mouse working properly.
Mhm.
So bottom line is there are bloodlines connected to the evil, and you're not personal friends with any of them, but you're quite aware that they are behind this. My host, my guest last night was Ben Baruch. He claims it's 13 people running the world. Have you ever heard that, Courtney?
I have. I mean, I don't know. I know they say 13 families. I don't know if it's 13 people, but
Okay, okay.
13 families. I have heard that. I I
So
it's entirely possible.
so if something's going to happen, they're going to be involved. They'll know. Would they warn us of what's going to happen, or would they just let us go in blindly?
I think they warn us all the time. I
Okay.
mean, everything's really hidden in plain sight. I guess biblically it would be considered revelation of the method, but I I don't think that they're, I don't think they're keeping the secrets from us, to be honest. It's just that most people don't read and most people don't really pay attention. So I think they're telling us.
And you look behind the news, you look at the philosophy. So their philosophy is evil, but they come across as wonderful people. But they're doing satanic sacrifices. You mentioned the Bilderbergs and the Alice Bailey types, but you also mentioned, oh, what's the name of the burning thing out in California, Northern California?
Oh,
Um,
Bohemian Grove or
Bohemian Grove, yeah. So
yeah.
there are rituals, and they're doing incantations, and they're all friends, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a big club. I mean, if you think about like any kind of a fraternity that you do a hazing, right? You have a hazing
Yeah,
process. So
yeah,
in that, it's essentially trauma bonding. It's also leverage for
yeah,
blackmail, but it's
sure.
it's trauma bonding. So yeah, when you go through that kind of a thing, you tend to be wedded for usually life. I mean, that's they bond. So yeah.
There are those that claim that Epstein was just taking film of all of the famous people doing those dirty deeds because then he could blackmail them later on. So you're saying that with the Bilderbergs and other groups, they probably entice them into certain activities and then blackmail them, right? And they own them.
I think so. Yeah. But I don't think it's just that. I mean, there's also just trauma bonding where, they give them some sort of it's like when you do hazing, you have to do something that it's not just the blackmail leverage, it's also like a humiliation ritual and you're traumatized in the process and that bonds you to your uh perpetrator. And so I think that, but when it's like being in an abusive relationship. A lot of times people don't leave because they're bonded, right?
Right.
So, I'm not advocating that. I'm not saying that's healthy. But
No.
there's a reason. But most people don't, right? Because they become so attached, and that's kind of similar to what happens with trauma bonding. So,
Okay, so the three questions to end it up is why are the well, is globalism increasing and who benefits from it if it does increase?
Mm. Well, I think it is very much increasing. I
Okay.
do think AI is part of that. I think this technological infrastructure is very much advancing the globalization, and who benefits the people who want to control. I mean, there are a lot of people who stand to benefit, right? The people who are high up in a lot of these organizations, these NGOs, these um, the central banks certainly stand to benefit. The four city states, the City of London, Vatican, DC, and then I would add the Bank of International Settlements. They certainly stand to gain.
Okay.
These 13 families, I'm guessing they have a lot to gain if
Okay.
there's a consolidation of power. Um, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who might benefit from that. I don't think we will.
What about the regular folks, the people that are watching this show, the people that you and I know? Will we become useless eaters in their eyes?
I think they already see us as useless eaters. Yes, I don't. I think that's why they keep talking about population control. They don't want to get rid of everyone, right? That's why the Georgia Guidestone said like, what was it, 500 million?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they still feudal lords still need their serfs to do their bidding. So I think they still need some, but they want a much smaller amount because it's easier to control.
Okay. And why do they disdain us? Why do they hate us so much?
Well, I think Alex kind of called that. They hate they're kind of at war with God. So I think
Okay.
they hate anything that's life. Yeah. I think that seems pretty accurate.
Okay. What do you recommend people do? I mean, other than buying your book, which is a good start, what do you recommend that people do as we go forward here? Because AI is growing. I mean, I'm kidding you, obviously, but I'm watching it because I'm a tech guy,
Mhm.
and I watched the databases being purchased by the
Mm,
UN back in 2022, 2021, 2022,
yeah.
2023. I watched all the RFPs, and they were just buying huge databases.
Well, and
And yeah,
mhm. Oh, I was
go.
just gonna say when the other people who stand to gain, I think, are like Silicon Valley and the big mega corporations who are in
Oh yeah,
public-private partnerships with all these NGOs. The Black Rocks, State Street,
yep.
Vanguards, yeah, but not just them. The mega corporations, they have a lot to gain from the globalization. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, no, no. I wanted you to answer that. So, okay. So, bottom line is, with the people, I don't know, believe in God. Increase your faith, love your family. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow, things like that.
Yes, I think all of those things are great things to do. I think there's a lot that people can do. I think that, it really does boil down to the individual. The individual needs to take action. I talk a lot about, yes, I talk about philosophy, but I talk about the metaphysical bedrock that this country was founded upon. And I know a lot of people have given up on the United States of America. I really encourage people not to give up. I
Okay.
do think that if we could reclaim some of those founding principles, they are a bulwark against tyranny. And I think that's a huge start, is to understand those and to inculcate them in your children. Certainly to instill your faith in your children. So if you are a believer, that's something you should share with and teach your children. I think there's a lot of very practical things that people can do. So a lot of people have given up on the political system. They're just completely demoralized, and that's the first stage, the color revolution. But I I think that's because they're so activated every 4 years, or even at the state level, which is actually quite corrupt, because I know personally, because I have gone, through great efforts to try and see changes through the state. And if people have power and a voice in either of those arenas, I'm not just trying to dissuade them. They absolutely should exercise their voice wherever they feel they can, and they have power to do so, and they feel, motivated and passionate to do so. They should. However, we have a lot more power locally, and it requires a lot more work. Most people don't get involved because it actually requires a lot more work, but it is where you have a lot more power as well. So I think people need to do things, at the very, very local and individual levels, whatever that means for you. It's not going to look the same for every person. For some people, it's going to mean not having a cell phone, or not having a smartphone, whatever that may be for them. For other people, it's going to mean running for a school board, right? Or getting involved in some sort of policies, engaging farming because they're farmers. It's going to look different for different people. We all have unique gifts, strengths, and talents, and our passions are our guide. And we also have different resources. So, people should make the most of what is available to them and what inspires them. And it's going to look very different for each of us, but I think each of us has a role to play.
Perfect. How do they find Courtenay Turner?
They can find me at CourtenayTurner.com. It is pronounced Courtney, but I spell it like Courtenay, COURTENAYTURNER.com. And that's my website. You can find my podcast, all the various different platforms where you can support my work there. And then I also encourage people to find my Substack, which is CourtenayTurner.substack.com. I do write quite a bit over there. And that's a great way that you can also support my work. I put all of my podcasts out early access and ad free to my paid subscribers. And I also give them, access to all the articles as well. So, yeah, and then of course, get the book. And that's a great
Get the
way.
book, show the book again. So there you
Yes,
go. Yep, Final
get the
Betrayal.
book. And this is really, we just wanted people to be informed, because I think so many people, the left hates Trump, and this is really not about Trump. I will just say that some
No.
people have interpreted that way. That's
No.
really not what it's about. It's about the policies and the regulatory infrastructure, and how they've hijacked the spirit, but what it is that Silicon Valley is doing and how much power they're wielding. And a lot of people have no idea. So you can't defeat a threat that you haven't even identified. So we want people to be aware of what is taking place, and then it's up to them to take action however they see fit.
People, the beast system is coming. It's biblical. It's going to occur. I can
Well,
find it
I
in the
don't
old.
think that we're supposed to just sit back and
No,
cheer it on. So
no.
I think that it's incumbent upon us to take action and to stand for free will. And that's our role. So we were endowed with that beautiful gift, and it is up to us to exercise it.
Keep your free will, people. Okay, cool. That's it. We're done. We've been blessed by a great session with Alex and with Courtenay. Thank you very much for giving us your time. And people, remember her book and how to find her. And there's my mouse working